Well, I think the main problem is we got comfortable in living this way. We got lazy, and we, of course, like Pam said, we're not getting the information we should be getting. So of course, we don't know. We don't know, and we got comfortable not knowing. That's the biggest problem. And once we want to start to know things, then we are troublemakers, right? And that we have been blocked from Facebook. A lot of you have been blocked, and I know that's what's happening for a lot of people in this field, because we're here to wake people up. Of course, we want them to see what really is going on and the danger that we all are in, and environmentally, autism. I mean, we also work with kids here that have autism, and hearing the stories from parents, what they've had to do to get them even to this place, it's heartbreaking. And this is an epidemic, and it's not going away. And we're just got comfortable. This is the problem. So public really don't know, because we didn't get to know. And any scientist that's trying to tell us, that's screaming about it, will not be heard. So this is amazing, because I mean, this panel is fantastic. I just love it. I love to hear that everybody is really on the bandwagon to tell people and to raise our life standard, our livelihood, and our life standard needs to really be uplifted, and we can't be comfortable anymore. That doesn't exist anymore. So I think people need to realize that we're sitting on a sinking ship. But there's tons to do.
Okay, I guess shy again. I'll jump in. In the interest of time, I'm trying to get in as many rounds as possible, but I have to go soon. But I'll just reiterate, you know, essentially my work is really understanding how all aspects of environment, not just chemicals, not just radiation, but a variety of human insults to the human body have occurred over time through, you know, and based on anthropology, how mixed we are in terms of our exposures now than we have been for millions of years. And so, you know, we're really living in this mismatch, and it's causing a whole host of health issues, as we're all pretty much aware. Here's the solution, in my opinion, having realized that medical schools don't teach anything about nutrition, 5 hours of nutrition over the course of 4 years of medical school, as just, you know, nutrition. And that's currently happening. There is absolutely no discussion really of environmental health, which includes many chemicals like BPA and phthalates and plasticizers and flame retardant chemicals. No discussion of radiation, how it works, what it's about, where there may be risk to human health. You know, how we handle stress and what that has been shown to show in the literature in terms of risk for developing a whole host of autoimmune disease. And we have great studies on this. So the solution to me, having not had it been exposed to any of this information where I should have truly been exposed, even in high school biology, college classes, is really to start with education. You know, I understand where my lane is. I know the people very well who are working very hard on Capitol Hill to really make differences when it comes to chemicals in food, cellular radiation, EMF radiation risks. But I know that my lane is really to try to get this into as many young people's hands, whether it's med school, high school, colleges, and to really help empower people to make their own educated decisions in terms of what they put in, on, and around their bodies. And just understand that there is absolutely no testing for chemicals before they go into any of the products that we use, including cleaning products, including personal care products, textiles, furniture, And that because of that, we have sort of let, the horse out of the stable, and now we're in a pickle. So it's really about education. I would love to help with, sort of the government regulation issues, which there are enormous amounts. Even my co-author, Dr. Fred Vom Saal, who's largely responsible for helping get BPA out of baby bottles, he and I really work together to bring both sides of the story of the regulatory failures, and then the human health issues. And I think when you know the whole story, making change is much more compelling. And that's my goal, is to give the full story, not just pieces of the story, and then help people make their own decisions based on that very well vetted scientific information. So I think the solution, the punchline, is education. And that's where I think if it gets into that realm, it will make exponential beneficial effects on human health, and actually for future generations, as we know how this can lead to future generations of issues. So that's my answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I guess I'll go next. So my thing is glyphosate. It's a chemical found in Roundup and many other formulations. Used enormously on our food. The U.S. consumes 20% of the world's glyphosate, with only 4% of the world's population. We have about the cheapest food, according to our income, of about any country in the world. And we have the most expensive healthcare costs by far. And I think those two are joined at the hip. And I think our food is, we have these toxic processed foods that are promoted by the industry. And then, people in food deserts where they can't even buy fresh vegetables. It's really very, very hard for people to eat a nutritious diet in this country. And I think there's really inadequate awareness of the role that toxic chemicals in the food play in the value of that food. And I can give a good example with, the plant-based diet, chickpeas, garbanzo beans, and lentils. They're probably considered very healthy foods in the plant-based diets. They have, according to the Canadian government studied over 8,000 samples of food samples from Canada, as well as imports from other countries. They found those particular products to have by far the highest levels of glyphosate of any products that they examined. In many cases, the highest levels were found in those products. They're non-GMO, so people think they're safe, but they're sprayed with glyphosate right before the harvest. And there are many foods that are sprayed right before the harvest. And of course, they're all vegetarian choices. So when you eat a vegetarian diet that's not organic, you're eating a lot of glyphosate. And I think that's a problem. So I think if you're going to eat a vegan diet, it's got to be an organic vegan diet in order to really be healthy. And the oats, wheat, which is of course bread, garbanzo beans, chickpeas, sugar cane, sunflower seeds. So many different foods are sprayed right before harvest, non-GMO foods. And that, I think, is a serious problem with the contamination that we're seeing in our food. What you can do to fix the problem, there's many things people can do personally to move in the right direction. Certainly, number one, don't use Roundup on the weeds in your yard. Find another way to do your gardening. Number two, eat certified organic, and that will also force the farmers to grow certified organic, because the more we demand it, the more they're going to need to switch. And the farmers, they're going to wake up and realize they're getting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma at a young age because they're working with glyphosate. And if they cannot use glyphosate and produce a superior product that the customer wants, they're going to switch over. One by one, the farmers are going to switch over. And we need that to happen, and we need it to happen fast. And so you can also do, of course, it's hard work to work with the government. I've tried, and I'm very frustrated with it at the state level, at the U.S. government level. It's very painful because the government has been bought so severely by the industry that they basically don't even hear you. You can barely even get them to notice you, even when you try hard. A whole group of us flew to Washington, D.C. and presented our results on glyphosate to the EPA, and it was a very disappointing experience. So it's frustrating with the government, but you shouldn't give up on that. In fact, local government is very, very, in some cases, very rewarding. I gave a talk, and they organized a little seminar at a town in Connecticut, and there were 3 of us or 4 of us who talked, and the result of that was that they banned glyphosate in that town. So that was very, very rewarding. And you can go talk to your school system, make sure they're not using glyphosate on schoolyards. You can try to get your local city government to refuse to use glyphosate in public areas. These are specific things you can do. And so, and of course, you can join organizations like Moms Across America. Zen Honeycutt, I think she's awesome. And she's really trying to grow public awareness among parents, mothers, to make them aware of the need to eat healthy food. And healthy certainly includes no processed foods. I think soy protein bars would be bad even if they weren't loaded with glyphosate. But so eating whole foods, is really, really important. And eating a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, if they're organic, is certainly a very healthy choice. In fact, even those amazing molecules that you can find in herbs and spices, the polyphenols and the flavonoids and terpenoids, those come out of the shikimate pathway, and the shikimate pathway is blocked by glyphosate. So when you eat those foods when they're poisoned by glyphosate, they're going to have less of the nutritious value that they offer for you as a very wholesome food.
I'll chime in. I would just have to agree that it's all about education and information, and that's where it all begins. And that's why, like you, Pam, I'm concerned about social media, because that was a wonderful way to communicate. But now we've got all of this censorship, and it's very flooded with anyone has a voice on social media. And so I think people, the problem that I'm worried about is all of this confusion, and I think that's given it legs. But I also think that events like this are extraordinary for empowering people with information and education. And I think that it's stuff like this, events like this, and all the stuff that's come out over the last few years, it's kind of like this grassroots movement. So if you can't go to the government, at least we're all, we're starting here. Then the conferences that we've spoken at, which were like a few doctors here and there, healthcare professionals here and there, are now thousands of healthcare professionals. And so because people are telling people, and healthy patients are going back to their physicians, and their physicians are saying, what did you do? And I think that it's really kind of perpetuating the spread of information. And I think that hopefully that's going to continue to grow. I've seen extraordinary expansion in the last, 15 years. It's just been extraordinary to watch. I think all we could do is just keep trying to educate and empower and speak wherever we can, and keep the information and the studies and all of that coming.
Well, when it comes to technology, and thank you, I'm honored to be here. I just, to everything everyone's saying, to add on, we need to demand safer technology from companies. So both the awareness piece is critical, as well as calling on companies to make safer technology with hardware and software changes, for example, that can reduce or eliminate sources of non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation, so that we aren't being the FBI when we go to the store and are trying to find something corded or without Bluetooth or without wireless, because we're trying to decrease the levels in our home. When it comes to the environmental impacts and the climate impacts, the solution is also corded wire technology as much as possible, because when we use wireless or 5G, which is an energy hog, there's going to be an exponential increase in energy consumption from all of these new devices and all of these new cell towers. So relying more on corded technology whenever possible is a key piece of this issue. It's also faster, safer, and more secure. And then there's the lifestyle changes. I mean, we have to use it less. We don't have to have everything be wireless. Not everything has to be wireless. And I never thought I'd be saying that, knowing that when I go to the store, it seems like everything is that's for sale at our tech stores. We also need to hold our government accountable. And I recognize I am, I've been at this for a decade now, and it is so challenging to get the attention of the government on this issue, but I think we're making headway in terms of technology. There are no limits for what is safe when it comes to trees, bees, birds, and our natural environment. And this is, I'm speechless, because we're putting in all of these cell towers, trimming trees that will be, and digging up roots, as well as increasing radiation levels to our wildlife, and something has to be done immediately. We need to halt 5G. That's what we're asking for, but it's unacceptable. And I'm really thankful that the New Hampshire Commission on 5G and the Environment did put forward a recommendation as one of their 15 recommendations to call on the government to come up with ecologically based limits. There aren't any that exist anywhere in the world. We have limits for human exposure, which are outdated and non-productive, like chemicals and all of the other environmental issues, but there have been no limits to protect animals and our insects. So I believe that the one last thing I want to say that I think is the most challenging, that I talked about, which is using less. The Shift project out of France calls it digital sobriety, and I think we'll all be healthier when we pick up a book or take a walk or turn off the phone and have that quality time when we're looking at people's eyes and not the screen. Thank you.
I'll go next. Speaking of technology, I think I had a blip and was gone, and I'm back now. So I go quickly before I'm gone again. So the question was, what is the problem? The first question of the three-part was, what is the problem? And I think for what my angle and my my research and vision is with animal agriculture, animals, and the environment and the environmental impact, I think that the problem is speciesism. And it's not a word that we hear enough. I hope we will hear more of it. And so I'm going to introduce this word now, if you haven't heard it before. And speciesism is like other isms that we know of, racism, sexism, and homophobia, other ways of saying, basically one group feeling dominant over the other, expressing domination over the other, and falsely feeling superior to another group. And in this case, we're talking about species, other species. And of course, the dominant being humans who have taken over this planet and are in every corner oppressing and suppressing the lives of non-human animals in so many ways. And this is not, it is most prevalent in farming and animal agriculture. So there's billions of animals that are suffering at the hands of humans for food that we don't need, that is unhealthy, that is causing zoonotic disease, that has so many problems. It's unnecessary. Speciesism is so prevalent in our world, in our society, in our language, in so much that we do, and it's unconscious. We don't even see it. We don't know. So it's something to become aware of, to be aware that really this is beyond just, to me, I'll just say, beyond just a diet. Veganism, a plant-based diet, is a justice issue for non-human animals. So it's beyond our own personal health and what we can get out of it. That's important, and that's a great place to start. But extending that compassion outward and protecting our planet, protecting these animals is so critical. And so speciesism is a really good thing to look at. I do briefly want to talk about fish. I saw someone in the chat say something about, and the fish. And I love that because they are really the forgotten food animal that we just don't talk about enough. And so Seaspiracy is a fantastic movie. I highly recommend it. I know there's been controversy around the science and these studies that they presented, but even if half of what they say in that movie is true, we're in trouble, and the oceans are in trouble, and the fishes are in trouble. So I highly recommend you watch that movie. I'm going to tell a brief story about fish, and then I'll move on, go on to others. But there were 2 goldfish in a tank. I think there were more goldfish, but we'll talk about the 2 goldfish, Blackie and Big Red. Now, Blackie was a little black goldfish who was born a little wonky. He was at the bottom of the tank. He kind of just could only hop around the bottom of the tank. He couldn't swim properly. And Big Red was his buddy, his tank mate. And when it was feeding time and the food was at the top of the tank, Big Red would swim down and swim under Blackie and go up and take Blackie up and let him eat first. He would let Blackie eat his fill, and then he would put Blackie back down, and then Big Red would go and eat. What are we seeing here? Big Red is expressing caregiving, friendship, selflessness, compassion. Are these attributes you would have ever thought of for a fish? Probably not. But now you know Blackie and Big Red's story, and there are so many of those kinds of stories of these sentient beings that are the fishes in our oceans. So just wanted to talk about fish. They need their moment to be talked about, and the oceans are being decimated just for this food that is unnecessary. So what are the solutions? I'll just say really quick. The solution: go vegan, going vegan, living a vegan life, living a plant-based life. The Alliance for World Scientists, talking about the environmental angle, they had this Alliance for World Scientists is 15,000 scientists over 184 countries. They were asked, what would be the best thing to do on an individual level to reduce your impact on climate change? Their recommendation was to avoid all animal products. They didn't say buy electric cars. They didn't say buy local meat. They didn't even say reduce your animal products. They said avoid all animal products. So there are powerful changes that we could make just by changing our choices when we eat. Yeah, so I'll let someone else go. Thank you.
Well, I'm really happy to follow you, Hope. I love what you're doing and I love what you're saying. So thank you for that. So in terms of the problem that I see is I see people are eating animal products and highly processed foods. And that to me is the problem, because in the process, we're hurting animals, we're destroying the planet, and of course, we're hurting ourselves. And so that to me is the problem. And in terms of the solution, I'm really excited to see the initiatives that are happening today. I can tell you, I'm a Canadian, and in 2019, we released, Health Canada released the new Canada's Food Guide. And I saw a quote from the Director General of the Health Promotion and Prevention Division. And he essentially said that in this quote, that the next Canada's Food Guide, the next National Dietary Guidelines will be free of industry influence. And that is a promise to the Canadian people. And he followed through on that promise. And our food guide has three groups. Half the plate is fruits and vegetables, a quarter of the plate is grains with a strong emphasis on whole grains, and a quarter of the plate, and a quarter of the plate is what they call protein foods. But they educated the Canadian public in this guide that plant-based foods are the first choice, and when they list all of the protein options, they do include some dairy and meat and fish and so forth, but the first things listed are beans and lentils and tofu and nuts and seeds, and then comes the animal products, and they emphasize choosing mostly plant-based foods. There is no dairy group anymore. There is no exclusive meat group. The beverage that is promoted is water. And this is a huge huge step in the right direction. And I think Health Canada has really become a global leader in developing nutrition policy that's truly evidence-based. And I'm really excited that ProVeg has started an initiative to try to encourage national governments across the globe to do the same. And so we, the solution is really educating the public, empowering the public, getting them to put pressure on their members of parliament or whatever you call it in your country, representatives, whatever, and doing everything we can to educate physicians, to educate dietitians, to educate health professionals, and empower them as well. And then we really need to, we've got a group in Canada called Nation Rising, and Nation Rising is really taking to task Health Canada to make sure that all of these wonderful things that they've said in our guide and dietary guidelines are actually implemented in schools and in hospitals and everywhere in the country. And so we've got a lot of people doing wonderful work trying to get our culture to shift. And I heard the other day Tobias Leonhardt, who's one of the founders of ProVeg, saying, so many people in the world eat meat because so many people eat meat. It's just we're human beings and we want to belong to a tribe. And so I think one of the biggest challenges is to make our tribe, the tribe of conscious human beings, one that is appealing, is one that would attract others. And we want to mainstream this as much as possible. And I think we're doing that. I'm not sure I would have ever believed we would be where we are, today, 30 years ago. It would have been almost unthinkable. So this is exciting. So I think there are solutions. We're working on those solutions. And, why doesn't the public know? Well, I think one of the biggest barriers to achieving the goals that we have is the power of industries that make a lot of the rules and who are so closely aligned with the policymakers, who often are the policymakers. And so that I think consumers need to understand and really make their voices heard, that we don't want that anymore. And it's possible. It's possible. We're seeing it in Canada. It's possible everywhere. So we really need to get industry to make changes. And the good news is industry is starting to change. So we're seeing some industries where they are, Stephanie's talking about glyphosate. The more we demand organic food, the more organic growers we will have. And even if people can't afford everything organic, at least if they can purchase their oats and wheats and chickpeas and, these things that you mentioned, Stephanie, or, in the organic form, that's a start. And so I think it's coming. We're at the tipping point, and we just need to keep working hard.
Okay, so a common theme is everybody would like more education, and I'd like to propose we use the fish to teach the human beings how to be better people. I think that might be a start.
That's great.
Seems like the fish have a lot more compassion than some of the humans we all encounter. Another common theme here that you've all been talking about is this problem with government. And Brenda, you brought up the collusion with industry. And here in the United States, it's so appalling. I mean, I don't know if everybody realizes, but last year, the drug and device makers in the United States paid the FDA $2 billion in user fees. And for the last, probably, I think 7 years, the approval rate for drugs and devices is 96%. Now, would anybody like to see the 4% they turned down? I mean, it must be like intravenous arsenic, and there's probably a conversation in the hallway. Just submit it next year, we'll let it through. We have to act like we're paying attention. But this is appalling. And why don't we know about it? Guess who is the biggest advertiser on the major broadcast networks? Big Pharma. $51 billion last year in advertising just on 5 networks. So it's no wonder that only one message gets out there. How can food possibly compete with that? How can nutrition compete with that? And Big Pharma is not only controlling the media, but having a lot to do with controlling the social media, which Julieanna brought up as a major problem, people being deplatformed. So what I think has to happen is there have to be consequences. I'm a firm believer we've reached the place right now where bad actors have to pay the price for being a bad actor. We can just no longer sit back and watch this kind of misbehavior and say, oh, well, we're just stuck with it. We are not stuck with it at all. And I think that's the subject of our lawsuits right now, is to bring forth a great deal of information about this government pharma medical collusion, to get some of the truth out there. There's some data that would just blow your mind, and I'll give you one example and you can check it out as soon as we get off of this discussion tonight. Go to the Johns Hopkins, the dashboard that tells you about all the COVID rates all over. I'll give you some statistics, just a couple that'll blow your mind. I live in Ohio with 11.6 million people, and according to the data, we had over 18,000 deaths from COVID. In Vietnam, this was as of the end of February, 98 million people live there on top of each other, and they had 35 deaths. Does anybody think that's a statistic that's worth investigating? Not a single media person has looked into it. Nigeria, 209 million people, 1,700 deaths. The city of Shanghai has two times as many people as Ohio, 35 deaths, 18,500 here, all right? So there's absolutely no way to explain this, and somebody should be investigating it, right? So this is the kind of information that is not getting out there. So what we're going to do with these lawsuits is, first of all, prove the fraud. But the second thing, and this is very important, is we're going to go after the people who did it and take their assets away, because that's what they really care about. The guy our governor is worth $70 million. He has ruined 1 million people in this state. I think he should take that money, we should take it, and make those people whole. The governor of Illinois is worth $3.5 billion. If we took that money from him and we gave it to the people he ruined, we would make it very unattractive for people to engage in this behavior. We have got to make government accountable to people, not government taking advantage of people with the help of industry. And this is going on with animal agriculture. It's going on with technology. It's going on with food. It's going on with medicine. It's going on everywhere. It's pervasive. And I think once the dominoes start falling the other direction, we'll see all of this become unraveled, and we will actually start to put together a system where honesty is required and there are consequences for not being truthful with people. Everybody here has a story to tell that is being withheld from most people, and that's an intolerable state of affairs as far as I'm concerned. And it's been getting worse for the whole 26 years that I've been in this business. So that's what I think has to happen.